Welcome to episode 5 of Cannabis Corner. Thank you for tuning in. This has been by far my favorite week to do research on. There's a lot of news on the industrial hemp side of things. And so just a quick roadmap of what I'm going to be talking about in this episode. We're going to start out with some medical research updates, then go into some regulatory updates on the THC side of things, then hemp fiber and its uses in construction, and a handful of different articles. Then we'll go into Pepsi entering the hemp space, and we'll wrap it up with a crossover between cannabis and Web3. So to start this episode, we're going to follow up on some research that we talked about a few weeks back, and that was all over the media about CBDA and CBGA and their potential to prevent COVID infection. So this research came out of Oregon State University, and now that same team is saying that they're expected to begin preclinical trials in the next couple months. And so there's a lot of steps that they have to go through to actually be able to do a trial on human subjects. And this is kind of the next step in that process. So I love that this is progressing fairly quickly, it seems. And I'm definitely going to keep everyone updated on any progress that comes out in relation to these studies. The second segment today is some positive news coming out of the Department of Veterans Affairs in that they're seeking to normalize cannabis conversations with veteran patients through new research website. So the Portland branch of the VA has partnered with an Oregon university to create a platform that's essentially just going to provide educational resources to doctors in regards to the medicinal benefits of cannabis. They're not taking a stance whether they're for or against using cannabis as a medicine. They're just providing the information for the doctors to go in and do their own research and make their own decisions. Now, the VA is a federally funded organization, so they cannot write any prescription for cannabis, and they cannot provide any of that medicine because cannabis is a Schedule I substance in the eyes of the federal government. So even if they wanted to have a conversation and they think cannabis would be a good medicine for one of their patients, there's no way for the VA to even help them get access to it. It's basically just going to say, hey, cannabis might help you. Now go find it on your own. So this is a major reason why we need to deschedule cannabis so that the VA can have access to it. They can provide it as a medicine to the veterans at no cost. It seems like it's heading in that direction. Obviously, cannabis is not going to be Schedule I forever, but even other substances like MDMA, VA official in September said that the department is very closely following research into the potential therapeutic benefits of psychedelics like MDMA. Another researcher acknowledged that people with post-traumatic stress disorder who use cannabis experience fewer symptoms and recover more quickly compared to people who don't use cannabis. So it's good to see that the VA is a little more open-minded about these things, but at the end of the day, if those substances remain Schedule I, the VA is not going to be able to provide that as medicine. So that has to happen first, which I'm optimistic will happen in the next 5 years. Third segment for today is about the NFL awarding $1 million to study the impact of cannabis and CBD on pain management. And so they announced back in June of 2021 that they were going to put some funds towards research into cannabis. They received 106 submissions and they selected 2 of them. So the first one is going to look into the effects of cannabinoids on pain and recovery from sports-related injuries. So this one seems like it's going to be for people who get injured in a game or practice. They're going to receive a vaporized formula of THC and CBD and see how it relieves their post-competition soft tissue pain. And the second study is going to look into naturally produced cannabinoids for pain management and neuroprotection from concussion. The game of football has changed a lot in the past few years because of research that's come out around CTE. So if there's any evidence that cannabis could help prevent or limit CTE in any way, it's obviously very research worthy. And I'm super excited to see what comes out of these, because I think if positive research comes out of this, this could be just another catalyst that encourages the federal government to deschedule cannabis, because it'll be difficult for the government to continue to ignore the medicinal benefits that cannabis obviously does provide. The fourth segment is transitioning into the regulatory updates on the THC side of things. And there's a congressman in New Jersey who is outraged over the lack of diversity in the cannabis license approvals so far. So Representative Donald Payne said on Twitter that he's outraged to hear that none of the 56 New Jersey cannabis business licenses were awarded to Black-owned businesses. These entrepreneurs have been shut out of the New Jersey's cannabis market. New Jersey needs to end this injustice. New Jersey, they're not going to allow home grow because they think it's going to lead to illicit sales. And they're having no emphasis on social equity in the beginning of their application process. This isn't new. Most states do not handle social equity well because it all comes down to money at the end of the day. You know, these people with millions of dollars in these multi-state operators, they're very well connected politically. They just know how to get stuff done. Small social equity applicants trying to start a cannabis business, they don't know how to play the game like these big MSOs do. So I'm hoping that like this pressure from Representative Donald Payne changes something in New Jersey and that they put a bigger emphasis on social equity. And at the very least, if they don't change anything, I hope states coming online after them learn from their mistakes and roll out social equity programs much better than pretty much every state has done so far. Segment 5, we're sticking on the social equity topic, and there's activists in Arizona who are suing the state's cannabis program, alleging that the social equity licenses are going to end up going to big cannabis companies. So there are 26 social equity applicants that are set to be awarded by the state soon. They've received 1,500 applications. This activist group is saying that more than 500 of them are tied to large dispensaries. They're also saying that the social equity licenses, they have it to where you can win the license and sell it the next minute afterwards. So these big companies find the social equity applicants, they help them with the process to get the application approved. Maybe they give them some money and they say, if you win, you're going to sell it to us immediately at this price. So obviously that's not conducive to having a super equitable program in Arizona. There is some hope though, because there's a bill in the Arizona state legislature that would prevent a social equity license holder from selling the license within 10 years. And if they do sell it, the license would have to go to another qualifying individual, not a corporation. This needs to pass. I'm hoping that this lawsuit is kind of just pressure to make the state pass this bill. If that bill passes, I don't see anything wrong with these big companies helping the social equity applicants get their license, because they're not going to be able to buy the license anyway afterwards. So I will keep everyone updated on this. Any news that comes out, I'll make sure to include it in future episodes. Segment 6, we have the House advancing Safe Banking Act as a part of the America Competes Act. So the Safe Banking Act is essentially an act that allows banks, federally insured banks, to work with the cannabis industry, provide financing, small business loans, things like that. As of right now, because cannabis's status as a Schedule I drug in the eyes of the federal government, no federally insured bank will touch it. So there's a lot of small things that are in the Safe Banking Act that are going to make life easier for cannabis companies. I believe 280E, which is some crazy tax code that's applicable to the cannabis industry right now, would be removed. So that would really help the industry as a whole continue to expand. But this being the 6th time that it's passed the House, it's not really news right now. But if it gets passed in the Senate, then we'll have more to talk about, and I'll do a deep dive into exactly what the Safe Banking Act is and what it will do. Segment 7, we have Pennsylvania recalling hundreds of medical cannabis vape products with little explanation. So apparently there's 650 products that have been recalled based on the ingredients that are in them, and they're all vape products. So they're saying that after finishing this review, the department has determined that certain vaporized medical cannabis products containing some added ingredients have not been approved for inhalation by the United States Food and Drug Administration. So people then are saying, okay, why are we paying attention to what the FDA is saying about cannabis products? They don't regulate cannabis products. That doesn't make any sense. But this is not the first time there's been recalls of cannabis products. In 2019, there was like nationwide news of the vape crisis. There was kids and people dying, and it was being linked to their vaping activity. It was pinned on vitamin E acetate being added to illicit market products. I was very in the weeds with all this stuff. I was working at a company that one of our main products was vape cartridges. So I have a lot of knowledge of what was going on in Massachusetts specifically with this. It was not just vitamin E acetate, and it was not just illicit market sales either. There was licensed operators putting things in their cartridges that they should not have been putting in, but they was just under-regulated, so it was no problem. Massachusetts responded very harshly to this. They halted all vape sales until they understood what was going on, and then they made some restrictions of what could be put into the vape cartridges. But at the end of the day, terpenes are often found in these cartridges. Terpenes are corrosive. They're acidic by nature. Most of these cartridges have metal internal components, and they're not always stainless steel. Corrosive, acidic liquid with metal, it's going to erode some of that metal, and you might end up with heavy metals in the oil that you're vaping. I don't vape at all because of the experience I had kind of seeing behind the curtain with some of this stuff. You know, I think there's safe ways to do it. I don't go near cartridges. There's safer ways to vape that are not cartridges. So just be careful if you're doing vape products. If you have any questions about this, I would be happy to talk to anyone in detail about kind of my experience in what my recommendations would be. I'm not a doctor, obviously, but I just have some unique experience working very closely with this stuff. So happy to talk to anyone about any concerns or questions that they might have. Segment 8, we're pivoting into news about hemp fiber and its uses in construction. So there's a team from RPI in New York that's setting their sights on the development of a concrete reinforcement bar made out of hemp. So there's an initiative in New York called the Seed to City Hemp Initiative. And they're partnering with RPI to leverage the Institute's experience in design and engineering. And apparently they've done some research into using a hemp-based thermoplastic rebar instead of a steel rebar. And they're saying it's stronger, lasts longer, and has a lower carbon footprint than using steel. And so they're also doing a lot in terms of trying to come up with like processing for turning it from the raw plant material and the stalk to be able to actually get the fiber that they need. So there's processing and degumming research that they're doing as well. And so this is one of the leading engineering schools in the country. I love seeing that there's going to be kind of a specific initiative related to hemp and what its uses in construction may be. So it'll be fun to see what RPI comes up with and what products actually end up finding their way into the market. Segment 9, we have some news coming out of the Winter Olympics in that they're featuring Canadian hemp fibers in luge and bobsled tracks. There's a Canadian company, Greenfield Technologies, and they sent more than 60,000 pounds of their N-Force fiber to be used for the competition luge and bobsled tracks. These fibers were used in place of traditionally plastic fibers. So this is awesome. Hemp is being used here based on its merits. This isn't a marketing ploy. This isn't mainstream news. It's just these hemp fibers work better. They're more sustainable. So they're being used on a large scale. This has made me even more excited to watch the Winter Olympics now. So I'm going to keep an eye out for these. Hopefully I can watch some of those races. And I'm hoping the announcers talk about it. I don't know if they will. They probably won't. But it'd be awesome to hear like NBC announcers on mainstream television talk about hemp being used in the concrete instead of plastic. Segment 10, we have some news out of North Carolina State University and that they were awarded $80,000 to address hemp fiber production challenges. This is a part of a bigger grant for agricultural research. And this specific $80,000 is going to be used to expand on previous fiber hemp research and provide growers with appropriate variety, planting date, weed management, and different things to just ensure that North Carolina has a successful industrial hemp industry. So there needs to be investment into research to make sure that a specific region is going to have a successful industrial hemp sector. In North Carolina State University is kind of like a beacon in North Carolina for a lot of this research. There's actually an event coming up in late March or mid-March. This was previously an in-person event. It just got switched to virtual, which I'm excited about because now I'm going to be able to attend. And it's the Evolving Textiles Conference, Materializing the Future. And it's going to have an emphasis on hemp fiber. So industry leaders in terms of industrial hemp are going to be speaking at this. I think it's like $100 to attend the 2-day conference. So I'll link this in the description of the video as well. But if you're in North Carolina, I think you're lucky because you have NC State as one of the leading university programs in regards to providing education around industrial hemp. Segment 11, we have some more news of funds being granted, this time to an eco-friendly hemp block company called Hemp Squared. So this is a company based out of Australia, and these funds are going to allow them to increase production capacity from 12,000 blocks to 200,000 blocks, and that's going to allow them to build 60 homes per year. Using hemp for building is one of my favorite use cases and one that I think will scale the fastest in the United States. And so obviously this is in Australia, but it's cool to see because Australia is going to need to have their own hemp industry where it's going to have to take place completely in Australia. They're going to have to grow, process, and make all these value-added products in Australia. So this is a massive step, raising this money, increasing their production capacity. It's going to increase the demand for the farmers and processing, and just in general will help propel the Australian industrial hemp market. For segment 12, I wanted to highlight this company based out of Oregon called Odin Materials, and they're making wood out of hemp fibers. So there's a handful of companies doing this, but they were selected as one of the top 100 startups of the year. So I just wanted to quickly kind of shine a light on them and talk about the potential for hemp to eliminate the need for deforestation. Hemp can be used to make paper, it can be used to make wood. We don't need to cut down trees that take 25 years to grow and become mature enough to chop down, when we could grow one cycle of hemp in 90 days and make those same products that the trees would make. Segment 13, we have one of the largest consumer packaged goods companies, PepsiCo, launching a hemp seed infused drink under the Rockstar Energy portfolio. So it's called Unplugged. I guess they did some testing in Germany and now it's getting rolled out to the United States. But it has hemp seed oil. There's no CBD or anything like that. So this is just something I wanted to point out because if this catches on, it's just going to increase the demand for hemp seed, which would encourage farmers to grow hemp in the United States. So I'm not a big fan of energy drinks, but I'm hoping hemp seed infused things do catch on because at the end of the day, it'll just increase demand for the plant in general. So for the final segment of this episode, we have a fairly well-known NFT project, the Gutter Cat Gang. It's a bunch of animals that started out with cats, and then they came out with dogs, pigeons, and rats as well. So they're launching Delta 8 disposables with the different characters on them. There's going to be a gamified aspect to it where they have different rarities and you can win an NFT for buying some of them. There's going to be like kind of this Willy Wonka style game that you can win different things by if you pull a rare one, essentially. So these must be some pretty big vapes. They're like 2 grams each, and they're saying lab tested, US produced Delta 8 THC. If you watch some of my other videos, I kind of have a weird stance on Delta 8. It's something that's, I think, holding the regulated cannabis industry back because it's kind of a government loophole as of right now. But this nonetheless is a crossover between the cannabis industry and Web3. So I wanted to bring it up. And they partnered with this company, Streamline Group, who apparently is an industry leader when it comes to marketing, manufacturing, and distributing nicotine and hemp vape-related products. So I think the initial drop is going to be 10,000 units. It's only going to be available to the Gutter Cat Gang holders. And I'm sure if that's successful, they'll launch it to a wider audience afterwards. But I don't know. Be careful with this. If you're buying this as a collectible, that's one thing. I don't encourage vaping. I think there's kind of a lot of weird shit going on in the vaping industry right now, especially when it's not from regulated cannabis companies putting it out. So I would stay away from these, but I'm sure they're going to sell out because vaping is really popular. Delta 8's really popular right now. And the Gutter Gang is really popular. So that wraps up episode 5 of Cannabis Corner. I know that was a longer episode. A lot of news was packed in there. So if you made it to the end, I appreciate you sticking around. If you liked the video, if you got anything out of it, please let me know what your biggest takeaway was, what the most interesting news article you thought was. Drop a comment. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. And I'll be back next week with another episode of Cannabis Corner.